Is everyone ready for class today? This is a really tactical session on making your email better, hopefully setting you up to earn some money from an email list. And if you don't have email, we want to help you get started, because you should have email. So the name of this presentation on the slide is Making Email Work for You. That wasn't the name of it on the program, but it's what we wish we had called it, so you're in the right place. But first, who are we? Take it away.
Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Andrew. I'm a fellow content creator. So traveling was always something that I was passionate about. I would always take tons of notes for every location, and then COVID hit. And at that time, I was in Colombia, almost didn't make it back, but I still loved doing travel research. So I kept doing research, and the next thing I knew there's basically all these notes that I had that I couldn't do anything with. So I decided to take the leap and be a travel blogger, a travel influencer. And I'm also a product manager at AWeber, so it's great because I build features I'm actively using, so I'm really happy. I feel like I'm in alignment. So.
Yeah, and I'm Chris Vasquez. I also am from AWeber. And I love newsletters, and I try and build the craziest possible thing I can build. The link up there, that's a illustrated weekly would you rather scenario. And I also made a virtual pet for email. It's all just like wild stuff. And AWeber, just a quick plug, we are an email marketing and marketing platform for creators and small businesses. You can build your audience with landing pages and sign-up forms, send them newsletters, send them automated emails, and sell your products or your services, whatever you're selling. Now, what are we here for? Like, why are we all here today? This is what we're planning to go through, and we want to answer any questions that you have. If you have them along the way, just shout them out. I feel like that's the best way to address things in the moment. But we're going to tell you a story of how Andrew's newsletter started out and how it became more effective. We're going to share the lessons that we learned so you can apply them to your own newsletters and make them more effective and something that people really love. We're going to teach you ways to earn money. And just a quick question. How many of you are currently earning money from your travel content? Just raise your hand. Okay. How many of you aspire to earn money from your travel content? All right, we're here to help. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to challenge you with something to do today before you leave TravelCon. The first part here is we're going to go through this story of a newsletter in 2 parts.
Yep, so I was really passionate about not going to tourist traps when I first started. So when I decided to make the leap into being a travel influencer, I just wanted to give straight content. Right, but as you can see there, right, it's not really appealing. It's kind of dry. There's not much to look at. And personally, I like to go to museums, so I would go to 3-4 museums too. So doesn't everyone like going to museums? But that wasn't the case. So moving on. So actually, a lot of people like having a good time. They like having a nice drink. They like going to restaurants. And one of the things that I've learned from talking to customers is that humor is a big thing. If people are always looking for content for just the straight substance, they can read a guidebook. But few people actually read a guidebook. So I like to put in humor, and I like to put in a part of who I am into each email, so it makes it easier to digest. And actually, one of the things I also learned too is just that a lot of times people don't get to travel like us. And we know that it's easy to travel. You can travel on any budget, but most people actually only travel once or twice a year. So even though they can't travel to a certain location, they like to have the experience of traveling. They like to feel like they're traveling. So in each newsletter, I basically add a cocktail section. It was going to be a food section, but I drink more than that I actually eat, so I can't make too many recipes, but I've tried pretty much a lot of cocktails. So.
And I'm Andrew's boss.
Yeah,
so when
he's my boss.
I have to shut off my boss side of my brain sometimes when we're talking out and about.
Yeah, so I really hope I don't get myself fired. So if there's anyone, hiring, please reach out to me. thebusytraveler.com. Yeah, so.
Okay, so we're going to go through tactically what Andrew learned and how he applied it to his newsletter. But first, I'm going to ask you another question. How many of you have a newsletter that you send regularly?
Oh, that's great.
Congratulations, that's awesome. Now I'm going to put you on the spot. Who doesn't? Raise your hand. Okay, you all should be. And we'll tell you why. But before you can start evolving your newsletter, you have to actually start it. And what are the benefits that you get just from writing consistently? Even if you don't feel comfortable with it, even if it's not your best content every time, it's good to just write consistently.
Yep. And so at least for me, and from listening to a lot of other content creators, a big challenge is actually getting started because we know it's a lot of work, right? There's so much that we always have to do as a content creator. There's something that we always have to learn. But quantity is better than quality. And there's actually a good study on that. This one professor set up an experiment in his classroom, and basically one half was going to be graded on the number of ceramic projects that they were going to complete in one semester. And then the other half was basically going to get judged just based on one. And at the end of the semester, it was undeniable that the group that was judged based on their quantity had better work. And we can apply this to traveling. So it's just like, if there were two types of travelers, right? The over-planner that only travels twice a year, and then there's one that doesn't plan as much, but takes 10 trips a year. Which one, who would you want to travel with?
Yeah, we're actually really interested with this. Who would you rather travel with? Or who do you think people would most rather want to travel with? Somebody who obsessively plans but rarely travels? Or someone who doesn't plan as much but does travel frequently? Well, okay, one, raise your hand for one.
The over-planner, okay.
Ah.
Yeah, over-planner, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a space for everybody. Okay, the second benefit.
So identity, so just putting yourself out there, it starts to change how you refer to yourself, and actually your how you see yourself, it shapes your behavior. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of us in this room, we always were doing, so before travel influencing, we were doing this for fun as a hobby. But at least for me, once I made that switch into being a travel influencer, I held myself to higher standards just because I thought of myself as a travel influencer. So if you start sending that first email, you're gonna make a switch. If you don't see yourself as a writer, you're gonna start acting like a writer. So just, send that first email. It may not be pretty, but it'll definitely start to improve over time.
And this is a real thing. This isn't a super tactical thing. It is much more of a philosophical thing. Andrew, we have this thing called Demo Day, where every 2 weeks the teams will demo the stuff that they've built. And every single time, Andrew finds a way to plug thebusytraveler.com. He runs the team that does our email building tools, and he'll be like, oh, look at this new feature. What's that? I'm building an email for thebusytraveler.com. And as he's really put on this identity of a content creator over the past 6 months or so, I'd say, it's really changed the way that he approaches thinking about problems and thinking about building his list, too. The last thing that you get is insights, and this is super important. I'm a big data nerd. But every time you share a piece of content, it's not just something that you're putting out there, it's an opportunity to learn as well. You're going to hopefully get feedback from people replying directly to you. And you should be explicitly asking for that feedback. I run that newsletter I mentioned called Would You Rather. Every scenario gives people the opportunity to actually click on a button and choose which of the scenarios they would pick. One was, would you rather have a human's head in a dog's body or a dog's head and a human's body? It's really stupid, but people love it. And they click through, and then there's a text box for them to add more feedback on why they made the choice, just using Typeform. And I hear not only why they made the choice, but they tell me all sorts of things about what they wish the newsletter was, even just personal stuff from their life, how it brightened their day. And that helps me make the newsletter better. And one nugget of wisdom that you get from somebody's offhanded comment could completely change the way that you approach your audience. Okay, what is stopping you from starting here?
Yeah, so there's three main things. So the first one is perfectionism, and this is my problem. I feel this all the time. So because I don't want to look bad, and especially as content creators, we're putting ourselves out there. So if you make a mistake, right, everyone sees that, and some people, may comment on that. But, it can never be perfect. We can always make it better. And what's more important than perfection is consistency. I think some of our TikTok influencers know that. Like, you can have a grainy video, but if you're consistent and if your passion comes through that, it doesn't matter. But a good way to get past perfectionism is just you set a period, just set a deadline for yourself and message that to your audience. Tell them that I'm going to send a weekly newsletter on Monday. And for me, sometimes I naturally wake up 4 a.m. to go write this email that I committed to doing in the morning. I'm not the happiest at that time, but it's a part of who I am, and it gets done.
Yeah. Next is fear. The idea that something might not be perfect. And for those of you sending newsletters, you probably are familiar with the fear that comes from hitting the send button. Because with email, you can't get it back. Like, once you send it, it's out there. You can't edit it, you can't change it. Your typos are there. If you put the wrong content in there, if you messed up dynamic content, it's out there forever.
Yeah, and seriously, so in the beginning, I'm not a writer. I would prefer to do math, but so my first couple emails had some typos, and there are some people that were calling me on that, and then they were commenting like, "Great job on the typos." And then at one point, I was just like, you know what, guys, you get what you get, all right? This is how it is. And in some of my newsletters, especially like when I'm traveling, I don't have time to go write. So sometimes in the beginning, I'm like, okay, I'm just writing this in the coffee shop. There's going to be typos. You guys are going to get what you get.
Yeah.
But people actually like those.
And the way to defeat this is to offload the responsibility of making that decision on when it's ready to send. Find somebody to take that from you, somebody you trust, and commit to sending them your email first. And if they say it's good, you send it no matter how you feel about it. And that'll help you get over fear.
Yep. And then the last thing is feeling overwhelmed. You can call it feeling overwhelmed or laziness. Maybe it's just the type of feeling that you have. For me, it's being overwhelmed. There's so much to learn: SEO, analytics. We have to post consistently on multiple platforms. So there's always something to learn. And so for me, it's really helpful just to take small steps. So for example, if I'm feeling like I don't want to write because I'm suffering from writer's block, I don't even think about writing. I just think about, opening up the lid of my laptop, opening up the page. And if you do like these small little steps, if you break down the big task of sending out an email into small little steps, they start to compound on each other, and they start to snowball. So that has been one of the tricks that I've used. But I'm sure that there's a lot of writers in here. I think you guys are probably a lot better at learning how to overcome writer's block. So please, share them.
Okay, so let's get into it now. And I wasn't kidding when I said that this is action item packed. So we really hope that you actually do some of these things because we believe in the power of email. I hope that those of you who are sending newsletters have seen the power of it and using email automation have seen it. But it's not going to matter if you don't do it. And if you need help, whether you're using AWeber or not, talk to us. Like, we really love this stuff and want to help you. So the first thing is that we learned, that Andrew learned in his newsletter, I've learned in my newsletters, is if you want to grow an audience, you have to ask people to join when you're first started. And that might feel uncomfortable. but you're never going to grow if you don't ask. And these quotes here, we put them in quotes, but they're just from us.
Yeah.
But we wanted to apply or imply a little bit of extra authority to them. But the single best thing that you can do is ask people to join your list. It could be family members, it could be friends, and you might think, well, I don't even know if this is relevant to them, and it might not be, but they might know someone who it is relevant to. When you do this, it'll grow your audience. It'll help you learn what your most effective pitch is as well. If early on, the way that you grow your audience is to tell someone about it, you'll start to learn what people react to and what words they respond to you with. So if I'm suggesting you do this in person. Go and talk to a couple people about your newsletter. Like, hey, Andrew, I'm starting this newsletter on would you rather scenarios. One of them's about having a dog head. What do you think?
Definitely.
And Andrew's probably going to tell me, like, oh, that's stupid, which means I probably need to do a better job of explaining it.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that you'll do is you'll get the opportunity to hear one-on-one feedback from people, which is invaluable early on. You need people to tell you what's working and what's not.
Yep. And so to riff on that, right? I terrorize my coworkers, right? So I always plug the busy traveler, you know. And the thing is, it's really good at practicing my elevator pitch. Like, why am I going to practice my elevator pitch in front of a mirror when I can just do it in front of a person?
A captive audience who can't go anywhere.
Yeah, like you can't go anywhere. There's totally a meeting that you can't leave. And it's really good because a lot of times they're like, okay, this is interesting, but like, why should I sign up? And so it helps to define how you fit within, like among other content creators. So.
Yeah, and so your action item here, if you haven't already done this, is to create a landing page, or if you have a website, add a sign-up form to your page. Doesn't matter what else is on it. Send that to someone and explain why they should sign up. Or you're at TravelCon with all these other really awesome travel creators. Have that page loaded up on your phone and say, hey, I'm thinking of building this. Would you sign up? Take a look at my first newsletter. Give me some feedback. Please do this. The next thing, and this is the perfect conversation to have at a travel conference, is that partnerships are a cheat code. Like when I was growing Would You Rather, the thing that led to actual audience growth after I had my first couple of subscribers, it's not the biggest list, it's like a couple thousand people. But I partnered with similar newsletters. One of them is called The Weekly Whine, W-H-I-N-E, where every week they pair a wine with something they're unhappy and complaining about. It's a very funny concept. But all we did is we did content swaps. Like, they'd include a little version of my illustrated scenario in their newsletter. I'd include just a little promo for their newsletter, and we generated a lot of co-promotional signups that way. So our challenge here is for you to find someone that might be sitting at the table with you and establish a content swap with them. We're suggesting you do it in a newsletter because we want you to grow your newsletter, but you could do it on any platform. This is a really smart way to grow. The one other note here is it doesn't just have to be one person. If you could form a little network, you probably don't want to go above 5 or 6 people that you're promoting at one time, cross-promoting at one time in your newsletter. But when you do that, it's kind of like raising all boats together. And it's really something that we'd recommend that you do.
Yep. And the Busy Traveler is available for partnerships. So.
And don't think about this as like, this doesn't have to be distracting from the mission of your content. Like, find somebody who aligns with what you're trying to do. Like, maybe you only travel overseas and, or you don't do any United States, US-based travel. Maybe you want to find somebody who does, in case your audience is interested. They don't have to go somewhere else. They can just trust that you have connections to these other travelers.
Yeah, so I want to talk about email and social media. I think a lot of times we like to think of them as either or, but I think they're complements to each other, and you need both if you want an effective business. So I like to think of email and social kind of like a camera and an SD card, right? So the social is the camera that captures that pretty picture, right? But email is the thing that saves that picture so it's yours and you can share it. Because social media is really great at getting exposure as eliciting an emotional response, right? So people naturally go on Instagram or TikTok to feel good, to watch that cat meme. You know, no one opens up their email box for that. But the thing is, though, you know, we're at risk.
Well, unless they're reading Would You Rather.
Of course, yeah. So, but the thing is, right? The algorithm can change at any point in time. So it's just kind of like you don't have that direct line to your audience that you do with email. And things like, what happens if your account gets hacked? I totally had a friend that had thousands of followers. His account got hacked, and now he has to start from the beginning. So, but with email, you basically have ownership of that list. You have that direct communication channel with your audience. So you need both.
Yeah. I mean, imagine maybe that a billionaire buys your social platform of choice and doesn't like the content that you're putting out. You could lose that overnight. And email, you do have a much more flexibility. Like, one of the things we love and also makes business difficult as an email provider is at any time, someone can take their audience from one ESP, one email provider to another, because we don't own that relationship. You own that relationship. Ultimately, that's a really good thing. There's no action item here because the action item is basically like, use social media, also use email. Hopefully that comes across.
So right to be shared. So I like to call this slide the screenshot test. So every time I send out a newsletter, I want to provide so much value that the reader wants to take a screenshot or bookmark it and save it. So this is a mental cue that I use for my newsletters. So for example, like 5 things to do, I want to add so much substance that someone can just share and share it to other people. And that's a good test to know if you're actually providing value. If someone's willing to share that content and to put their reputation and their name behind it, saying that, yes, this is good, I think you should check this out, then you totally know that you're doing the right thing.
And I'm just looking at this slide and realize that I never finished writing the second bullet point. So if you could just fill that in with something insightful, I'd appreciate that. Okay, so your action item here is to tell your audience, this is going to be a scary thing, but if you haven't started a newsletter, do this. Tell your audience that you're going to start next week and ask them to DM you if you're interested, or if they're interested. Another thing that you could do is just share that landing page that you would have created from the action item on the previous step. You could share that as part of your post committing to launching on a certain date. The other thing that I just want to mention when it comes to shares and metrics in general is, like on all platforms, there are lots of metrics, some of which are more helpful than others. And in email, probably the biggest vanity metric is the concept of an open rate. I would encourage you, if you're using that to make business decisions, to find a different metric, because there are all sorts of reasons why that's going to be messed up. Some email platforms don't have images turned on by default, and images are the way that we as email providers track opens for people who don't click on a link. So if somebody opens your email and doesn't have images on, they're not going to be tracked as an open. Or if someone's using an email client that caches images for you, it's going to look like someone opened an email when they actually didn't. So what we'd encourage you to do is use a more active metric, something like the click-through rate, or really, we'd encourage you to use something like sales or shares, things that show that somebody really had high intent to interact with your content to identify what's working and what's not working.
Yeah, and Chris is doing a great job for me right now because there's notes here, but I can't see. I don't have my glasses. So he is totally filling in for me. Thanks, Chris.
So here's I think the last one of these tips on what we learned is people relate to people.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I learned, I'm very idealistic if you haven't picked up on that already. So when I post content, I want to focus based on the content. So if I were to take a picture, I want that amazing site, which means that I'm not really in that picture. But then one time, my brother, he basically sent me a text message. He was like, Andrew, like, you're not in any of the pictures. You need some thirst traps. and so he's like Gen Z. So I had no idea what a thirst trap was. So I basically log onto my work computer. And I'm like, thirst traps. And then I see all these pictures, and I'm like, oh, crap.
Wait, on your work computer?
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, thirst traps. But I'm like, okay, I don't want to take thirst traps. I don't care about them. Look at this pretty picture. And my brother said, people need to want to connect with you. And if you just have pictures and you're not in them, they're not going to feel anything. And I've noticed, based on my analytics, that my thirst trap pictures, social and email, they do
Don't encourage
significantly
him.
better. So yeah, so the busy traveler does thirst traps too. So.
All right.
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
To take this to email, we have a customer who's not a travel writer. He writes about marketing and brand. His name's Jay Bear. And his automated welcome message is a master class in introducing yourself as a person to your audience. Just a couple things to call out. He includes a picture of himself front and center. Like, people do really want to relate to people. And you'd be hard-pressed to find any buzzwords in his content, even though he writes about marketing. He uses plain language. There's one more little tip in this. That highlighted section there is where he explicitly asks people to introduce themselves and respond in the email. That is such a clever design device that he's using. It's like brutalist design. It looks kind of ugly, but it's really clear what the most important part of this email is. It's actually forming a connection with Jay. So your action item from this is to add more pictures of you and personal stories to your content. We were talking to another customer of ours. He runs a blog called itinerantfan.com. And it's about when you travel to a location for a sports, you can tell how much I'm into sports, a sports game, what you should do while you're in those cities. And what he found was, initially he was just writing dry content, but then somebody was like, who are you, basically? So he started at he added a little preamble about where he was going and why. And people started to mention what he wrote in that preamble on his social channels. The only place he had shared it was his newsletter, and it was coming through to his interactions on social, which was pretty cool. It reaffirms this fact. Folks want to know you. Okay, now we're moving into the big scary part for some folks. Any questions we can answer about general email marketing things before we get into monetization? All right, I'm going to push you on that later. So there are 4 ways we're talking about earning from a newsletter. You can sell your own thing. You can refer someone else's stuff. You can sell sponsorships. And you can sell subscriptions. And one big thing to note is when we talk about monetization in email, we always hear, well, I don't have a big enough audience yet. And I think people oftentimes have in their head, I don't think this, people tell us this, they need 10,000 or 50,000 subscribers before they can start earning any money from email. That is not true. Like, we have customers with hundreds of subscribers who are earning money from email, and regular money. So get that out of your head if you're thinking that you're not big enough to actually earn money from your newsletter. It might not be a living, but it will at least be enough to cover your costs, allow you to run ads, and help you build your audience to where that revenue does cover your living expenses. All right, so the first thing is selling your own thing. And here I'd encourage you, you probably all already have products people would pay for just because you travel. So how many of you have a spreadsheet that you use for travel planning? Raise your hand. Anyone want to share what your spreadsheet is? Oh, what do you use it to help with planning for? That's awesome. Airtable is amazing. Andrew, do you have spreadsheets?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, do you charge for any of them?
Nope.
Don't follow Andrew's example.
Oh, wow. Thirst traps. Thirst traps. Do it for the thirst traps. All right.
Okay, how many of you have checklists that are really helpful for making sure that you don't mess up while you're traveling? Do you have any checklists?
Yes, I do.
Same question? Do you
Yes.
charge for them?
No.
No? Okay. What about local reference sheets to help you keep track of places that you want to visit or visit again? Do any of you have those? All right, great. And what about just the tips that you've accumulated over time? Do you have them written down somewhere? Like what works, what has helped you travel? Well, every one of those things are things I don't have. Like, I am not a travel content creator, but when I want to travel, they would help me. So like Andrew has this incredibly helpful map of Memphis with all of these interesting places, and it's led us to having a really fantastic weekend. I did not build that. I would have had a much less fun weekend. Those are all things that you could sell, and you might not sell them for $50, but you might sell them for $5, or heck, if you want, you could sell them for $2, although I think that that's probably underpricing the value. But you have to remind yourself, like, that thing didn't come out of nowhere. It took time, it took experience, it took expertise, and that's what people pay for when they're paying for knowledge products. They're paying for time, the time that the expert took. They're paying for the context the expert took, and the formatting, putting it in a Google Sheet or something like that.
And so I want to riff on this, because from talking with you guys, right, you guys have gold, right? You guys tell me your ideas, and it's amazing. And so basically, you guys already did the hard stuff by doing the research, and this is the easy stuff. And if you don't think you have gold, just give your ideas to me. I will write them down and I will sell them. And maybe that plays into some of the other tendencies, the perfectionism, the fear and stuff like that. But it's just like, wow, some of the ideas you guys have, you guys can do so much with them.
Yeah, and you have a product that you're working on.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. So I've just completed a quick checklist for working remotely, because after COVID, a lot of people are working remotely, but they don't know how to do it like we know how to do it. So this checklist is available for everyone. If you sign up to, the QR code is right there. This is exclusive just to TravelCon, so I'm thinking about selling it. So if you have any advice on how I can change it, how I can tweak it, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, and this is an example in practice, folks. Like, this is a really simple landing page that currently has a sign-up form on it, but could very easily have a checkout on it. And so please, check it out. Give Andrew his feedback. You should not leave that free for too long. Like, follow your own advice.
Definitely.
So that's the one set of products you could sell. They tend to be lower price, lower effort. There's also the higher priced, higher effort. Those are things like trip planning and guided tours. A customer of ours, Derek from Wandering Earl, he has a really awesome newsletter. It's like a journal-style newsletter where he writes about where he's going, what he's doing. But he also sells trips, and they seem like really interesting trips. And he uses his email to sell those trips. Here's just a quick example of a call to action block in that Join Me in India section. So what do you have to do? You have to, I did it again. Pick the most helpful tool, I'll fill this one in for you, that you've created and sell it. Like, there's so many tools that make it easy to just sell a knowledge product. You can do it on AWeber. It's super easy to just put up a landing page with a checkout on it. But if you use a tool, like if you have a Stripe account and you've used Stripe at checkout in the past, you can do it that way. Heck, you could put it on, sell it, ask people for Venmo payments if you want to. But just sell something. Because Jeff Goins from yesterday said something that I resonate so hard with. It's like the gap, I'm quoting him here, the gap from 0 to 1 is an infinity, but the gap from 1 to 2 is only 1. And we've seen that with our customers. Like, the thing that feels hardest is making the first sale. But once you've made the first sale, it's so much easier to make the second, because you've laid all the infrastructure already to make a sale. And you start learning. Okay, referring someone else's product. This is affiliate sales at the simplest terms. This is a customer of ours, Nate and Steph from Explorist Life. We actually met them at TravelCon in 2019 or something. We've been coming to TravelCon forever. And they started out as like a van life content creation adventure channel. But what they found is they got lots of questions about outfitting or converting camper vans to solar-powered camper vans, or converting like Econolines to solar-powered camper vans. So that's what they switched to start doing. And now their real goal is to educate people on how to do that. They sell like schematics as their own product, but they make a ton of money by referring the pieces that people need to build those camper vans. We have a case study where they made like tens of thousands of dollars off a single email send around a partnership that they have with a battery company. So this is something that when you're doing it, it's really important that you find something that fits with your content and then gracefully integrate it into the content. So as Nate is talking about how to build a camper van, he might mention like, this is all about batteries, and then that's a perfect place to reference a battery sponsor. But how does this work to travel content creators, or how does it relate? The customer I mentioned earlier, Ed from Itinerant Fan, he writes about what to do when you're traveling to watch sports, and he refers Ticketmaster in his emails, which perfectly relates to his content. So where can you find affiliate offers easily? Where could you search for stuff that might fit what you're offering? We included 3 things here, and your action item here is to go find an offer that works. It's kind of fun to cruise through some of these. Share a sale, it's really easy to use. You can probably find something that relates to what you're writing about. CJ, it used to be called Commission Junction. They're huge, a little bit more difficult to work with, but really good stuff. And even Amazon Associates. You don't get a ton of referral revenue for each sale from them, but it's super easy to find something that relates to what you're talking about. It's anything on Amazon.
Yep.
The next one is selling sponsorships, and this one, it might be counterintuitive, but I feel like this is the one, if you're just getting started out, that I would focus on. Because you're not going to sell a sponsorship if you have no audience that is going to get you $50,000. But I really think, and we're starting to see this from our newsletter creator community, that you can find someone who will help you cover the costs of starting. So what we're encouraging you to do is to find someone who really aligns with the idea and who would benefit if you end up with a larger audience. Talk to them about sponsoring your launch. And we're talking about something pretty low, like $50 a send. So if you send weekly, it's $200 over the course of the month. And what you're going to probably have to do is commit to a reasonably long period of time for this. So you're going to have to be prepared to keep writing this for that period of time. 2 months, 3 months, maybe 6 months. But I'm confident that you can find someone who will partner with you to launch this. Because if you grow, they'll grow with you. And why is this helpful? Why would you worry about a reasonably small dollar amount sponsorship like that? I mentioned this earlier, but it helps you cover the costs of starting. So whether it's SaaS tools or advertising, allow you to actually run lead ads or something like that to find an audience, which is the hardest part when you're first getting started. Okay, so how do you find a launch sponsor? How do you successfully pitch someone on this? You have to have a plan for how you're going to grow and be prepared to share it. Now, that doesn't have to be this massive business plan. It can just be like, where are you going to spend this money? Like, how are you going to use this for growth? Because what they're committing to is not paying you for influence yet, because you don't have it. They're paying you for future influence. So growth is important. Reach out locally if you can. So if you happen to have the good fortune of being a local content creator for your city, your town, then this is way easier to do. Because you can find a restaurant or some other attraction that wants more people there, and it's easier to make that sale. And then you just got to ask. Like the earlier slide about growing your audience initially, you're going to have to be comfortable with people saying no initially. And every time somebody says no, ask them why, to explain why. So the next time, you have a defeater for that no. So your action item here, write down 3 businesses or projects who could be good launch sponsors. So to Andrew's point about not trying to do everything at once, the first little step is just identifying who you would reach out to.
Yep. And so, question?
Sorry, yeah.
What I'm really talking about is kind of custom content, like a paragraph about the product. It could be an image like Ed uses in his. This is part of the affiliate program for Ticketmaster. It could be that. That's fine. But what we're frequently seeing is someone will add it in the midst of their broader newsletter with a little sponsored tab and just write a paragraph about the thing they're writing about and why they like it. Like, anytime I'm in Memphis, I go to Gus's Chicken because it's delicious. And just a small story, I should overshare. I definitely fell asleep last night eating chicken from Gus's in bed. You did?
Yeah. It was kind of my fault because I currently have a borderline eating disorder, right? Just because I'm oversharing too, right? I like to eat. That's the whole point. I like to eat. So I just don't go to one restaurant. I go to like 3, 4, 5, 6 at once. And I kind of brought Chris along. Yeah,
we went to tacos, then chicken immediately after last night. Does that answer your question? If you swing by the booth, I can show you some examples from customers who are making it work doing this.
Yeah. One caveat I do want to say though, make sure that that brand that you're sponsoring, the sponsorship that you're doing, make sure that it's aligned with who you are. Because remember, people are following you as a person. They want to see you. You don't want to be like a walking like NASCAR, you know. But the Busy Traveler is available for partnerships. So yeah.
And then the flip side. So that's something I think that people with an established list, it's going to be easier for you to find sponsors. You should definitely be doing that. If you aren't selling sponsored content in your newsletter, you should be. It's a really hot space. Brands are interested in getting space in people's newsletters. And there are some companies, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this on the last slide, like Paved. If you check out Paved, that's a great site to connect with brand sponsors. You do need a list to be considered, like to be in their list of of newsletters, but check that out. There are a bunch like that. If you want more recommendations, swing by the booth and I'll write down a list for you. But this is kind of the flip side of that, because people who don't have an audience, you can sell sponsorship for launch. But selling a subscription, you need an audience. You need people who, obviously, you need people if people are going to be paying for your product on a recurring basis. But if you have one, it is a fantastic way to grow your business. Because if you were here yesterday for El Camino's and Memberful's talk, it gives you predictable revenue. So you can feel much more comfortable making decisions about growing your business. Things like ad spend, things like purchasing additional tools, even doing more extravagant things as you travel. El Camino gave a really great pitch on how they operate their membership platform. But I did want to call out a couple things that we're seeing people include as part of their membership sites, their subscription sites. Because just like with the checklists and stuff, where you're looking to sell stuff you already have, the key with subscription sites is to offer stuff that you already have. So some of that stuff might be behind-the-scenes content. We mentioned people care about you as a person. They often care about you as a person. So if you have outtakes or something that you wouldn't share normally, that's a great thing to put behind a paywall. Andrew was actually just telling me a story about how he was traveling in San Diego and took a pretty nasty spill while wearing his GoPro, and he hasn't shared it. And I was like, I'd pay to see that.
Thanks, yeah. I was having fun on rocks, and I slipped, and I busted my butt, so.
Yeah, travel guides, that's something El Camino Travel mentioned is they do 2 travel guides a year, I think. Access to experts, like a Q&A with you. You are the expert. That's what people pay for when it comes to knowledge products. And access to a closed community forum. And I combined those bullets for some reason. But a great place to start is with content you've already created. So your action item here, if you already have an audience, is to do a version of what was mentioned yesterday. Ask people what they wish you offered that you don't offer yet. Because that implies that they have at least some level of interest in that thing. OK, you could also try them all. So Derek from Wandering Earl, this is at the end of his email. And he has not 1, not 2, but 3 ways people could possibly pay him. So his newsletter is free, but you see that he says, shop my favorite travel gear. Those are affiliate links. Make a donation. You could use like a buy me a coffee or something, or AWeber to accept donations from folks. And you could also join one of my unique small group trips. So he has opportunities for anyone with any amount of money to support him. Like if you want to donate $1, you could donate $1. If you want to buy a product that you need anyway, you could do that and he'll get a small portion of it. Or if you want to go on a trip, that's going to cost more money, but there it is, promoted right there. So to recap really quickly, you've heard a story of how a newsletter became more effective. Hopefully that was interesting. Your reasons for not starting have been defeated, so you have no excuse anymore. You've learned lessons on how to make a newsletter that people love, and you have ideas for earning money from your email audience. So we want to leave you with a challenge, and this is really for folks who don't have an audience, but if you have a small audience that isn't growing, or if you have a page out there but just have been nervous to share it, we want to challenge you to do something. We think that you can get your first 20 subscribers before leaving TravelCon. And to do that, if you don't have a page yet and don't have an email provider, so you can sign up for free at AWeber. It's free to up to 500 people. Then we created a landing page template that you can use. It's at clickpop.aweb.page/TravelCon. I should have made that URL nicer. But if you go there, you can just hit the little copy button, and it'll pull that page into your account. You can swap out your images and text, and you've got a page. And then if you stop by our booth, or if you tag us, if you share your page somewhere, we'll be your first subscribers. And I'll reshare the cool projects that I see, because I'm sure they're all going to be wonderful. A couple things that you could do to build your audience is ask people directly. You should reach out to your friends and family, like we mentioned before, and share it. Like it might be scary, but you're not going to grow if you're not asking.
Yeah. So a couple things, like don't sleep on email, because the people that subscribe to your email list, they're more engaged. So the LTV, long-term value, and the potential revenue that you can get from them is much higher. If there's any obstacles that you encounter with starting, or if you have an email question, please reach out to me. I love traveling. I love building features that people use even more. So yeah, I really want to help. So.
Okay, so really quick, we have a couple housekeeping things. I should have put this at the beginning, but if you want to grab the session, there's some slide notes in there. That QR code will give you the presentation, so you can. It also has all the links to all of the things that we referenced. If you have feedback, we put together a little survey, because we want to make sure that when we talk to people about email, it's helpful and interesting. So please give us unbiased, don't hold back. We want to get better, and we trust that you assume our positive intent. And if you enjoyed or learned from this session, we'd appreciate it if you share it. And that right there is an object lesson in self-promotion.
Definitely. The Busy Traveler is available for partnerships, sponsorships, collabs. Follow me on Instagram, sign up to my newsletter. So. Thirst traps, I specialize in thirst traps.
What questions do you have about email? Yeah. So the question is, if you're including a post from your website in email, do you change the headline specifically? Oh, I don't think it's confusing at all. Because honestly, the context of someone going from your website to your post, as long as the main thrust of the content is the same, you're not going to confuse people. And if you're talking about in the body of an email, I wouldn't overthink it. Like a headline that, unless you're writing SEO-focused headlines for your blog, then I would the general piece of advice is write your email like you're writing it to a friend. So if it's written like it's written for an algorithm, change it. Because you're gonna do better if it's written for a person. And email isn't indexed, so you don't have to worry about anything crawling it. And I'd also encourage you to test. Like, your audience is probably different from Andrew's audience, which is different from my audience, and ask people for their feedback. But don't stress about it. You don't need to optimize content for any sort of robot. Yeah. Yeah, so that's a good question. The question is, like, could it be confusing if somebody noticed something in your newsletter and then goes to look for it on your website later? I don't think, as long as you have a good search and you're describing the general context of the content well in both headlines, I wouldn't be worried about it. Yeah. The other thing, too, is, like, one of the neat things about email is it's kind of ephemeral. Like, you send it, and people don't tend to re-reference it later. So most of the interactions that you're going to get from email are going to happen either in the email send or very quickly after the email send.
So, questions?
Yeah.
I got this one.
Okay.
Yeah, so I experienced that problem too, especially, so to answer your first question, which is how often you should post, I would say whatever you're comfortable with. For me, the busy traveler, it's weekly, and it is a lot.
But don't feel like it has to be
doesn't
weekly.
have to. Yeah. But the most important thing about that is that you communicate that to your audience. So if you're just doing monthly, right, say that this is a monthly newsletter and stick to it. So make sure that it's monthly. Once you start breaking that cadence, then you start to get, then you start to be forgotten. And then once you do send an email, like, later on, then the person's just like, why did I sign up for this? I'm going to unsubscribe. So choose a cadence that you're comfortable with and stick to that. In terms of posting on Instagram and how that is linked to newsletters, I feel what you're feeling. I like to have a taste or a sample on my Instagram post, and if the person wants to find out more, then the information is there. So I don't do any type of clickbaity type things in which it's just like, hey, look at this, why don't you follow me on my post. I try to list out the points in my Instagram. And then if you want to learn more about a specific point, you can totally click in the bio to find out more. Does that answer your question?
Sure.
Yep.
And I mean, like, we think competition is healthy. We all do things a little differently. I'd say the big things that AWeber is really focused on is, and everyone will say this first one, but ease of use. Like, we really want to make sure that our platform isn't the reason someone doesn't start. So for beginners, it's ease of use. And for folks who are writing, we want to make sure that you don't have to spend a ton of time in your email marketing platform. Like, how many people love doing that? Okay, I'm not even going to wait for people. Okay, one person.
There we go. There we go.
But the other thing is service. We have our CS team is just magical. They're wonderful people. They're available by chat, phone, and email. They're around 24/7, and they're really tightly connected to our product teams. We have CS representatives on all of our product teams, so if we're hearing something that's causing our users pain, that comes right to the product teams from the CS liaisons, and they're also really highly trained in the product. The flip side of that is they're highly trained in the product, so they can help you really well. And the last thing is we were innovators from the beginning. We started 20-something years ago. Tom, our founder, did it because he was too lazy to manually send emails. And we're just continuing to innovate. We have our dynamic content is just really powerful. Like I have a newsletter where I have random horoscopes generated for people, all just written out in the email, and it's very fun. And we're also working with a technology called AMP for email, which adds, like the technical side of it is it gives you access to a light layer of JavaScript. But what that means for senders is you're going to be able to allow people to do stuff, far more stuff, without having to leave the email. So they could take polls, they can page through or like go through carousels of images, and ultimately what we're really working towards is an end state where people are able to pay directly in an email without having to click through, just removing friction.
Yep, and so also I would say customer focus. So any time that we release a feature, well, before and after we release it, we put it in front of users. So we actually care what we build, and we like to interact with the customers. So we've had a couple interviews here. We've shared that with the whole company, so anyone in the company can see. And you know, there's a lot of other content creators at AWeber just like me. So right after work, I'm doing content creation just like you guys. So
yeah, and on the price side, we just have simplified pricing. Like we have one paid package where you get everything. Yeah. So the question is, do you know any ways to keep the email from going to the spam folder? And we have a minute, so I'm going to give you the short version of this. And I'd love to talk more about this afterwards if you want to talk. But the big thing is write like you're sending to a friend. So if you pack an email with affiliate links, that's not going to help you out. You saw in Earl's example, he had one link to a page that had all his affiliate offers. That is something that is probably going to keep you in the email inbox's good graces. Another thing, this is a really small thing that so many people overlook, is don't use unstyled links in your email. So don't include https://youtube.com, your video. Write text that talks about that video and highlight and link that text. Because what the inboxes look for is things that look like spam, because that's how they're figuring this out. But the point about writing like you're writing to a friend is that's changing a little bit, and the inboxes are getting smarter at knowing who you individually are and who your audience is. So what's really going to matter is your audience engaging with your content. So last thing, because we're over time, if you're sending to an audience right now, every 6 months or so, or even if it's every year, find someone, or all the people who haven't opened an email in the past year, send them a message asking if they're still interested in your content, and then this is going to be painful. The people who don't click or reply, unsubscribe them. Because if you're sending to people who aren't interacting with your email, that hurts your reputation and is ultimately going to lead to worse deliverability for you. I love talking about this stuff, so if you have questions, please come by the booth. We'd really love to help you. And thank you so much for coming. This was great.